The next day, Sonia found herself in Hell's Kitchen with Nate. They had escaped the icy streets of Midtown and were walking around B&H Photo, the place looking more like some kind of factory than an electronics store. Sonia looked up at conveyor belts crisscrossing overhead, moving camera equipment and laptops throughout the enormous space. As her eyes darted around the store, Nate looked at her with concern. She'd been silent since they met up that afternoon, and she had this blank expression the whole time. Now she was staring up at the conveyor belts, eyes tracking the moving bins with laser focus, like her mind was somewhere else. She finally snapped out of her daze when she felt a soft tug. Nate was slipping his hand into the pocket of the wool coat she was wearing, the one he draped over her shoulders the night before. She watched him pull out a set of keys. I didn't know those were in there.
Yeah, neither did I till I got home last night.
The doorman let you in? He nodded. Sorry, I should have given his back to you last night.
Don't worry about it.
She glanced down at the coat's soft wool weave, the way too long sleeves, now folded back at the cuff. I wore it to church, too. It's a real nice coat. Keeps out the cold.
I know,
He said with a rare playfulness that softened her serious expression and finally had her cracking a smile. Then Nate pointed toward a few computers, asking her to pick out some stuff for the office since she seemed to be into technology. Sonia looked over a few, then pointed out some IBM laptops.
I was thinking we can go to the office after this. You could find them and take a look.
Yeah, we can do that. She nodded, expression flat again. He sighed a little with concern. Sonia was more different than he'd ever witnessed. She didn't seem sad, like the first day they met at his office, just emotionless, like some kind of stranger. His eyes moved over her, studying her expressionless face.
How was church?
He asked. Then, just as he expected, a small light returned to her eyes. It was so good, she smiled. My pastor is always in my head. It's like whenever I'm going through something, he's got the right message. It's weird.
Well, maybe it's divine help from God. Him speaking through your pastor. Getting his message to you because he knows you need to hear it.
That's how I like to think about it. After Nate set up deliveries for desktops, laptops, and a fax machine, they headed a few blocks north to the new place, a high-in-the-sky office with beautiful views of the Manhattan skyline. This place is crazy. She stared out the floor-to-ceiling window as they walked up a wide hall. You got enough business over the summer to get a place like this? She asked with wide eyes.
I've had a few good cases, but I also got back to the studio, working with a couple of artists and making 2 new tracks. Most of the money came from music.
Everybody at that party didn't make it seem like you was some sort of big deal.
I'll come out of retirement to work on a couple of songs here and there, keep my prices high and my workload light.
She gave him a slow nod. That way you can charge a premium, she said, as Nate opened the door with her name on it. Everything there looked high quality and carefully selected. There was a gold-colored brass lamp with a matching letter opener and a gold container filled with pens. She picked up one of the pens, reading her name etched along the side in gold script. I can't believe you tried to fire me. You had all this waiting, a whole office, she said in a quiet voice.
I was firing you to keep you safe, not because I didn't want you working here.
He let out a deep sigh, locking eyes with her.
I still think you should take some time off from working with Louise. Give yourself some time to cool off.
I'm fine, Nate.
No, you're not. You're different. And if I can tell, so will they.
Trust me, When I go in there tomorrow, I'll be my normal self. He looked at her with doubt. Yesterday you told me you recognized Javier from investigating Louise, and not because you two were introduced? He nodded, waiting for her to go on. So if you were introduced, how did Javier even know that you were my PI? Asking if you were there investigating his uncle.
How did he know you were working with a PI? And you tell him that?
Yeah, I told him about you back when I hired you to work Lucky's case. Then she rolled her eyes. Then I told him you were working on my father's case, like a dummy. So maybe after that he started looking into you. What if Javier broke up with me because he was afraid that you were getting close to the truth? Her words flew out in a rush as she tried piecing everything together.
Sonny, try to calm down.
He told me it was because Rico was back in New York, but that could have been a lie, she said, still speaking quickly.
Slow down. Why will Javier break up with you because of your ex? Did he know he was some crazy stalker?
No. Rico and Javier are best friends. She lowered her gaze, ignoring the curious look Nate was throwing her way. Then she continued. Maybe that's it. Javier could have found out who you were from Rico, she said in a confused tone, leaning against her new desk, letting out a heavy sigh. I don't know what's going on anymore. This whole thing is too confusing.
And that's why I'm here. You don't have to figure this out alone. We getting close, and I know we'll have answers soon.
Then he stepped closer, speaking in a kind yet firm tone.
Sonny, when you go into work tomorrow, you gotta act normal.
I will.
And what did we agree to when you go back to the office?
No snooping, no prying, and no investigating. Just listen and observe. She sighed, looking away from him and down at her brand new desk. Sonia spent the week eavesdropping on conversations around the campaign office and clocking every person who came to meet with Louise, but still came up with nothing. Then finally there was a break in the case, the night Sonia attended the charity gala on Saturday. The ballroom was thick with money and perfume, as Sonia sat listening to Jasmine, who was swirling the ice in her glass as she talked.
You think this is the year Louise finally gets elected and goes to BC?
Jasmine asked, nodding toward Louise holding court across the room. Sonia gave a half shrug. I don't know, but don't rush it, or we may lose our jobs. Jasmine let out a big laugh.
No, I'm not complaining. Just wondering because he seems to lose every year.
Yeah, but he still seems to somehow make so much money. So I guess either way it's a win for him, Sonia remarked as her eyes landed on Javier and a slow burn started in her chest. The eyes she used to get lost in now looked like the beady eyes of a lion rat. How deep was he in this? Were he and Rico playing her close that whole time just to protect Louise's shady business? Javier's head turned, and for a split second their eyes locked across the sea of fake smiles. Then Sonia quickly looked away.
You okay?
Jasmine asked, her voice cutting through the noise in Sonia's head. Sonia just nodded, then turned her attention to the dance floor. Teresa was out there, twirling around in her black and silver ball gown and looking like she was having no time but her life. She smiled at Sonia, then gave her a small wave.
I'm going to a party after this.
Jasmine announced with a wide grin.
You want to come?
Probably not.
Come on, Sonny. It's not going to be like that other weird kickback at Ish's place. This time, it'll be a real party.
Another Black Student Union event? Sonia asked with a frown.
No, this boy I met at his party is throwing it. He was this real cute producer I've been talking to.
A knot of worry tightened in Sonia's stomach. Who is he?
His name is Najee, and I really like him.
Yeah, I'll go with you. Sonia smiled weakly, then gave her a nod, pulling out her phone, texting Nate to tell him that she was going to the party. Then he shot her a text, telling her to come outside. Sonia stepped out of the St. Regis, walking halfway up the block to Tony's 1998 Honda Accord. Did y'all see the dark-haired man going to the hotel? Sonia asked after sliding into the back seat.
Yup, we see him talking to Louise, too. At least we would be able to see him if Teresa would stay still for a minute.
Sonia leaned forward to get a better look at a small device on Tony's lap that looked like a portable DVD player. But instead of a movie on the screen, Tony and Nate were watching grainy feet from inside the gala. The scene spinning as Teresa danced circles around Louise, Javier, and the dark-haired man.
When you go back in, please tell my wife to knock off the dance moves.
Is there sound on that?
No, just video.
Tony answered. So, Nate, you want to go to the party with us?
Nah, and you not going either.
He said simply, eyes still on the screen. Yes, I am. My friend is going, and I don't think she should be there alone. He finally looked back at Sonia.
You going because you worried about your friend, or you trying to snoop?
I'm worried about my friend. He shot her a doubtful look, then turned his attention back to the screen. Jasmine says she's been talking to your old co-worker Najee. Said she bikes him a lot. Is he somebody I need to warn her about? One of the predators?
No, Najee is not a predator. Your friend will be fine.
You get any info on who's throwing the after parties?
Not yet.
Sonia's phone buzzed with a text. My friend Jasmine is asking where I went. I already told her I will go, and I'm not gonna make her go alone. Don't worry though. I won't snoop or go to any second locations, she said, opening the door.
I'm coming too.
He announced. Then he asked Tony if he would be okay keeping an eye on things for the rest of the night.
Yeah, go to your party. Me and Teresa will be fine.
Tony said, his eyes still on the little screen. Najee's spot was a fifth-floor walk-up, nowhere near as big as Ish's warehouse turned condo, but beautiful nonetheless, having the same over-the-top luxury that seemed standard for their circle. Sonia and Jasmine moved to the apartment, which was packed just like Jasmine promised. So many of the familiar faces Sonia had seen during the investigation. She kept an ear out for any talks of an after-party, as she stood with Najee and Jasmine, feeling like an awkward third wheel, the two flirting and cheesing in each other's faces. Najee seemed cool enough, but Sonia found herself eyeing him with suspicion. Nate was nearby speaking to somebody, and it seemed like he was being pulled in different directions all night. Every time someone spotted him, they were begging for some studio time. Once Najee stepped away from Jasmine for a second, she turned to Sonia, smiling wide.
Thanks for coming with me.
It's nothing, and thanks for inviting me. This party is a whole lot better than the last one.
Girl, I know.
She rolled her eyes. There's Pity D, Sonia announced, her eyes darting toward him as he moved through the crowd with his entourage.
There's so many famous people here.
Jasmine said, all excited. Sonia forced a smile. You think any of them are having an after party?
They usually do. Why, you want to go?
Sonia glanced back at Nate, who was having a conversation with Najee. Maybe, if he wants to come with me.
Oh, I see.
Jasmine nodded with a grin. No, it's not like that. Sonia said in a low tone before grabbing Jasmine by the arm. She took Jasmine onto the balcony, away from the crowd of rich celebs. I'm only going to the after parties if Nate can come with me, because he warned me how they can be. He told me some real crazy stuff goes on at Avadam, and most of the dudes at these parties are predators. You haven't been to any, have you?
No, but Rachel did warn me about going to him. I thought she was being a little dramatic.
From what I heard, some really sick stuff can go down.
Yeah, I'm cool on the after parties anyway. I was just going to go if you wanted to. Trust me, I'm good with just spending time with Najee tonight.
Sonia smiled. I'm so happy for you. I can tell he likes you so much.
Yeah, I know.
She laughed, making Sonia laugh too. They stared inside at Najee, who was glancing around the party like he was searching for Jasmine. His face lighting up with a smile after spotting her. Then, as Jasmine headed back in, Nate stepped out.
You all right?
He asked, closing the sliding glass door behind him. Yeah, Sonia said, arms wrapped around herself in the chilly night. Nate pulled off his jacket, handing it to her.
Throw still this one like you did the last.
He joked. Sonia smiled, slipping it on, appreciating his warmth, which was still clinging to the jacket. They were both silent for a second, and Sonia seemed withdrawn into her thoughts again.
What do you do on Tuesday night after work?
Nothing. Why?
Nahira's cooking dinner and wanted me to invite you over.
I would love that, she said, finally smiling. Where? Out in Queens?
Nah, Nahira's place in Manhattan. It'll be you, her, and her husband.
He said, texting Sonia Nahira's number, then asking if she is ready to head home. I think we should look into some of those after parties. Nate simply said no. Nate, we need to move this investigation along. Nothing will go down if we go together. We may find out some information about that dark-haired man. Maybe some of his girls will be there. He walked into the gala with Louise, strolled right past the hostess, so nobody even checked off his name. He was so close tonight, and we still don't know who he is.
Teresa is shuffling around him right now. Maybe she'll hear something.
Sonia sighed. You ever been to any of those parties?
No. My old boss Jay told me how sick they could be and said I should stay away.
So Najee and Ish didn't go to him either?
Najee didn't go.
Yeah. Ish did tell me he saw some crazy stuff while working in the industry. I guess he went to a few of those parties.
More than a few.
She shook her head slightly, then said in a pushing tone, We should go.
Why do you want to keep putting yourself in traumatizing situations?
I just want to solve this and get them locked up.
We don't need to go to some freaky parties to get info. That enough I brought you here.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm fine. Nobody's bothering me and everything's alright.
Give it some time. You just got here. Once these vultures find out how vulnerable and sweet you are, they'll prey on that. Most of these dudes talk a good game, and it will be real easy for them to take advantage of you.
You actually think I will fall for any of these guys? He shrugged. So you think I'm stupid? She asked, offended.
I don't think you're stupid. Just maybe a little gullible.
I'm not gullible, she snapped, her back straightening.
You almost fell for Ish.
That was different. He nodded, looking away from her. There was silence again. Then Sonia put his jacket tighter around herself, mind racing and anger building. She turned, peering into the opulent party filled with smiling celebs, and suddenly she fell sick. So many predators in the industry with no one doing anything about it, even though everyone seemed to know and it was just one big open secret. Rashad had been killed behind trying to bring their dirty deeds to light, and her father had gotten caught in the crossfire somehow. And now there they were, without a care in the world and on their way to do who knew what at those freaky after parties. Nate, these girls we're trying to find are trapped, minds taken over by predators, preying on their innocence, living the reality you're so afraid of me even getting a glimpse of. She turned to him. Are you really gonna let your own fears stop us from trying everything we can? What if you were so busy protecting me from a possibility that we fail to protect them from what they're suffering right now? Nate stood silent, cornered by the truth of her words. She had turned his own arguments, his care for her, into a weapon against his own reasoning.
After the show, it's the after party, then. After the party, it's the hotel lobby, and after the Belvy, then it's probably Chris. And after the original, it's probably this. Yes, ma, Bed-Stuy, Fiesta. Remix with the homie from the Midwest side. Game recognized game. Do too. It's a new 2 Live crew, I suppose you know. So thugs, pop your toasters, but don't approach us, or bullets will chase you like Moet Mimosas. Catch us both coasters, racing twin poachers, boxers with glocks to the pop you to make you closest. Whoever come closest, you've been warned. But don't get the picture till the weapons is drawn. Make your way backstage, baby girl, it's on.
Stepping into the after party was like stepping into a different reality. The party was in a massive, multi-level condo on the Upper East Side, a glass and marble palace perched high on Millionaire's Row. Colorful moody lights washed over Baroque-style walls, lined in crown molding and extravagant wallpaper. The condo wasn't jam-packed, but it was decorated with bodies, mostly girls, draped over the plush furniture, some with sharp cheekbones and long limbs like models, others the unmistakable Coke bottle figures of video vixens. Sonya scanned their faces, searching for anyone who was underage, but these girls all seemed around Sonya's age or older. Most were in the huge living room, where, laid out on a mirrored table, as casual as a cheese platter, were neat lines of Coke, and beside them, 2 small bowls filled with pills. Nate kept Sonya close as they moved through the hazy party, his jaw locked tight as men hungrily ran their eyes over her, looking like they wanted to devour her, and a few looking like they wanted to devour him too. Everybody there was being all overly touchy, with groping hands, all out in the public, and looking crazy high. Then it happened. A man with glazed over eyes from whatever was in those bowls stepped directly into their path, slurring his speech as he said to Nate,
Hey man, your girl look hot. Let me borrow for an hour. Take her upstairs.
Sonya froze, but Nate didn't. The shift in him was instant. The easygoing man Sonya knew vanished, replaced by someone else. Then it happened in a blur. Before the drunk man could even register the threat, Nate had him. Bunching the man's dress shirt in his fist, the collar went tight around his neck, choking off the man's words, as Nate effortlessly lifted him until his shoes dangled over the carpet. When Nate finally spoke, he didn't raise his voice. He lowered it to a low, dangerous rumble, telling the man that he needed to walk away. That seemed to scare the drugs right out of the man's system, sober him up immediately as he apologized and backed away.
Yeah, this was a mistake. We should leave,
He said through clenched teeth. We haven't found anything out yet. Just calm down. She winked her arm through his to keep him there, then steered Nate toward a cluster of sofas where some hazy-eyed models were draped, sipping drinks. They sat down on a love seat near the girls, and Sonia tried to eavesdrop. But none of them seemed to be talking about anything important. Just some small talk about other parties and fashion. A white girl with long black hair smiled at them, then said,
I've never seen you two at one of these. It's usually always the same old people.
Yeah, we don't usually get out much.
These parties are always so good. They stay fully stocked.
She nodded toward the table, then lifted a bowl of the pills, offering them to Sonia and Nate. His expression went hard, and he just stared coldly at the girl. Sonia smiled politely and shook her head. Then the girl popped a couple of pills into her mouth, washing it down with her cocktail. She laughed and said to Sonia,
Your boyfriend is cute, but seems sort of mean.
He's just tired.
They've got beds upstairs.
She purred, eyes full of suggestion.
We could all go up there.
Sonia gave the girl a simple no thanks, then asked in a friendly tone, So how did you hear about this party?
There's some friends. We come out whenever Pitty is in town and wants to party.
Then Nate pulled out his cell phone, and the playful light in the girl's eyes vanished, replaced by a look of genuine alarm. She leaned in close, and her voice dropped to a frantic whisper.
You can't use that here. No phones allowed.
She warned. Instead of rushing to return it to his pocket, Nate finished tapping out his text, then told Sonia that Tony was on his way and they should go. Teresa turned slightly in the front seat, her gala sequins looking out of place in the dingy car.
While I was dancing around Luis and his clams, our guy with the hair mentioned he's throwing some party next Saturday.
Where?
Nate asked, his voice low and serious.
Some manor in Connecticut.
Tony chimes in, keeping his eyes on the road.
Luis said he'd be there.
Did you get a name?
They didn't say no names, but I'm sure if you can find out more about the party and the manor, the name won't be too hard.
Sonia looked at Nate, whose face was unreadable in the dim glow of the streetlights. A manor in Connecticut. That sounds like a compound to me. Nate gave her a nod. When Monday rolled around, Sonia showed up to work with Rita's favorite takeout and a wide smile.
Whoa, what did I do to deserve dinner?
Rita asked, digging into the bag. I just wanted to show you how much I appreciate working here.
You know I love having you here. I'd be lost without you.
She said, crunching on her empanada. I was thinking, maybe I could take on more responsibility. Go to some other events too, not just the ones we throw.
Really?
Sonia nodded enthusiastically. I was interested in going to that dinner, the one I picked your dry cleaning up for. I think it was in Connecticut or something. Sonia played dumb. Could I go out there with you guys?
I didn't think you liked going to the events for Louise. And you want to go to one on your weekend off?
Yeah. I want to start networking and making connections. Take advantage of the opportunities I have working here. And I heard some really important people are going to be at this dinner. A warm smile of approval spread over Rita's face.
You had me worried. I honestly thought you brought me dinner to soften the blow before you quit.
Why would you think I wanted to quit?
You know you're hardly here as is. I was beginning to think school and work were becoming too much. Then, you seemed so sad lately, after you and Javier broke up.
You knew about us?
Luis and I suspected it. Then the two of you disappeared all summer. Javier called asking me to give you a raise. It wasn't hard to figure out,
She said. Then her expression suddenly became serious.
It seemed like such a bad breakup. You looked so depressed. But you seem so much better now. You can focus on school and your career, and maybe in time, a relationship with a guy from school
she urged, smiling again.
An Ivy League man, like we talked about?
Sonia nodded, allowing a small smile to creep onto her face. Rita always seemed to be so supportive, like she genuinely had Sonia's best interest at heart. She hoped Rita wasn't just talking a good game, but that she was in the dark about Louise's shady business, just like Sonia had been. So, will you be able to get me into that dinner this weekend? Sonia asked, smiling with a hopeful look.
I'm good friends with the man throwing the dinner, so consider it done.
Rita laughed. After Sonia's talk with Rita, she slipped into Javier's office, spending 10 minutes rummaging through his desk, but came up empty-handed. She stood, feeling defeated, just as the door opened. Javier stopped in his tracks, surprised.
What are you doing here?
I need to talk to you. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady.
About what?
He moved to his desk, pulling open a drawer. Is Rico going back to Colombia? He looked up concerned.
What's wrong? He bothering you?
No, I was just hoping that since he understood it was over, he'd leave.
Rico's not moving on. I thought he got the point too. He made it seem that way. But I guess he had time to cook up some alternate reality, 'cause now he's talking about the two of you getting back together.
Sonia rolled her eyes. She had cooked up that question on the fly, just needing a reason to be in there. And it turned out Rico was starting up all over again. Seeing her look of distrust, Javier quickly added,
Don't worry though. I'll take care of it this time.
You gonna get him deported?
No, but I'm going to convince him that he needs to leave, and this time I won't let up.
His gaze lingered on hers.
I'm glad you came to talk, and I'm sorry our last conversation went sideways.
Don't worry about it. Her voice went flat.
You were so mad at me. It just felt like something else was going on, and I got upset.
He held her gaze. Act natural. Nate's words came to mind. But she had no idea what natural was in this situation. She was silent, so Javier continued.
It's just so crazy to me that you could go from beating down my door and being happy to see me to looking at me like you hate me in just a short amount of time. I know you trying to be more than Jesus, and you mad I sided with my friends about Ebony, but you being this upset just seems like something else.
Why else would I be upset? She asked, her tone accusing.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking her.
He met her challenging stare. Try her best to play it cool, she said in a level tone. Javier, I don't hate you. It's just like I said, I'm doing things right now and putting God first.
He already seemed real important to you when we were together. You was talking about him all the time.
Not all that important if I was sleeping with you. Back then, I was putting you before Jesus and making excuses. Now I'm not just talking about it. I'm going to follow his commands. But if you don't believe me, why do you think things have changed?
I don't know. Maybe after seeing Rico, you had a change of heart.
You can't be serious.
I saw you on the bench. Looked like old times, with you wrapped around his finger.
She could hear what sounded like real jealousy. I was being nice to Rico because I realized I was treating him the way you treated me. Being cold and so harsh. I decided to give him closure with kindness. It worked at first, but now you telling me this. The next thing she knew, his hand was on her forearm and slowly moving down to her wrist.
I'm sorry how I ended things. I thought being cold was the only way to get you to understand and keep you safe.
She stood up into his eyes like she was studying him. Do you love me? She asked out of nowhere. He held her hand tight.
I told you, I'm gonna love you forever.
Now why can't you be honest with me? He looked at her confused. Our whole relationship was secrets. We were a secret. And your life was a secret.
Sonny, tell me what's going on.
She slid her hand away. If you really loved me, you'd be honest.
I have been.
She rolled her eyes. So you weren't just using me?
You think I was using you for sex?
Not just for sex.
Then what else?
Why did you ever get with me? I didn't give it too much thought when we were together, but I'm starting to wonder now. It seemed to come out of nowhere. He was silent for a second. Then in a low, serious tone, he admitted,
It wasn't out of nowhere. I saw how sweet and smart you were. Just so different. I couldn't understand why you were wasting your time with Rico. I started having feelings for you a long time ago. Feelings I hated myself for because he was like a brother to me. He still's like a brother to me.
Sonya was so confused. His words seemed genuine, but deep down, she knew he was hiding something. Right before she turned to go, she asked, the other night at the gala, how did you even know who the PI was? Javier looked caught off guard.
I overheard him introduce himself to somebody. He said he was the PI. Then I saw you two talking and figured it out.
She left out of his office, face remaining stoic as rage bubbled inside of her. On Tuesday night, Sonya sat at the small table in Nahira and Asif's apartment, which overlooked Central Park West. The couple brought out plates of food from the kitchen. Then Asif said grace. Afterward, the couple began to dig in, but Sonya was hesitant. The food smelled good, but looked so strange. She played it safe, trying something that looked like a hush puppy, but ended up tasting 1,000 times better. Then, as she devoured her meal, she finally took in the room. The place was small. The living room and dining room all combined in one tiny space. The walls were a deep orange, and there was mismatched but comfortable-looking furniture, complemented by potted plants on every surface. It felt cozy and somehow very familiar, and didn't match Nahira's style at all. She was always so posh and polished, so Sonya figured this decor had to be all Asif.
So, Sonya, what are you gonna do with your degree in religious studies?
Nahira asked in a very serious tone. I'm not for sure yet.
You need to figure it out soon. You'll be graduating before you know it.
Her voice was tinged with concern.
Please tell me you're not getting an Ivy League education to end up at some gritty little PI agency.
Sonya laughed slightly as she shook her head. No, this is just a temporary thing. I'm only helping out on one case. But you know, the agency isn't all that gritty anymore. Nate's moving into a new office in Midtown, she said with a proud smile. He's really doing big things, helping out a lot of people. Nahira shook her head, crunching on some falafel.
I'm sure he's helping people, but investigation work is a dangerous profession, and he really should just get somebody else to do it. Hire some people to work at his firm and get out of there. I don't like it at all.
I think he needs to get back into the real estate game. That's where the real money is.
Nate was in real estate?
He bought our old building back in Queens. Then he redid it. You should have seen the place when we were growing up. It looked completely different.
So he owns that building out in Queens?
Yeah. He used to own 2 buildings. That one and one out in Brooklyn that he revamped too. I thought he was crazy at first buying property in Dumbo. But Nate was ahead of the game because Brooklyn is an up-and-coming area now. Everybody's moving out there.
I think he doesn't want to do the real estate thing anymore because he started it with Nicole and just wanted to close that door.
Nahira nodded, then turned to Sonia explaining.
Nicole is Nate's ex-wife.
Wife? Sonia asked in shock.
I know. I tried to talk him out of it, with them being so young and Nicole being Nicole.
Then Nahira made a face and caught herself.
I'm just saying, I knew it was a bad match from the start. It didn't even last a year, and he ended up giving her the Brooklyn property in a divorce.
Oh, wow. Sonia mumbled, crunching on her salad and thinking about how crazy it all was. The entire time, she thought Ish bought that place, and come to find out, the beautiful loft was Nicole's. No wonder the girl was upset. She married Ish, then he secretly married another girl and moved her into Nicole's home. Their insane dynamics seemed to get crazier the more she learned about them.
So yeah, don't let Nate rope you into working for him. You've got a bright future, and it's bad enough my little brother is in that nonsense.
Trust me, Nate is not going to try to rope me in. He doesn't even want me there. He's just doing me a favor because I basically begged him to help out with the case.
Good. And what is this case?
My father's murder. Both Asif and Nahira paused mid-chew and shot Sonia sympathetic stares. Sonia tried lightening the mood, speaking in a somewhat too cheerful tone. But we're really close to finding the killers. It's only a matter of time. They smiled weakly, slowly eating their food. After a short bit of silence, Nahira started up again, suggesting that Sonia look into becoming a professor. I could never do something like that. I get way too nervous speaking in front of people.
You didn't seem to have a problem speaking in my class.
Nahira smiled. That was different.
Nahira told me you chewed her out about demons.
I didn't chew her out. I thought she didn't believe me, but it turned out she was just teaching me to defend my beliefs.
Yeah, Sonya knows now that I believe that they're real, just like she does.
She turned to her husband, shooting him a look.
Asif's the one who thinks they're just metaphorical.
Sonya looked at him concerned. Demons are very real. There was some kind of demonic infestation in my house. Nate was there once when they manifested. He heard something too. Asif looked at his wife, frowning slightly. You don't believe me?
I just think that sometimes people can jump to conclusions, thinking the devil or demons are behind things that have perfectly reasonable, non-paranormal explanations.
We heard a heavy thud across the room, and nobody was over there.
It could have been the wind. Was a window open?
Nope, it was winter. All the windows were closed.
Maybe something shifted on a shelf and fell over.
It was a demon. Me and Nate both know what it was. Then with great interest, Nahira asked,
Do you remember what the demon looked like?
Most of the ones in my house were just shadows. But there was one that I saw up close, and it looked like a teenage girl. But her eyes were all black.
The black-eyed children.
Nahira mumbled, shaking her head. The what?
There have been a bunch of reports of these kids, usually preteens, with all black eyes. A friend of ours, who's a pastor out in California, ran into one a few years ago.
Sonia, are you sure you didn't hear about these kids from someone else and just think you saw the girl?
I've never heard of black-eyed children until tonight. Asif sat back in his chair, like the discussion was making him uncomfortable. Then his wife leaned forward, with an intense look in her eyes.
A few of my colleagues have been tracking demonic occurrences in this country, and numbers seem to be shooting up. We're seeing a definite connection between the infestations and the rising popularity of the occult.
That's when I started to have the problems, when I got involved with Santeria.
I'd love to set up a meeting with you and my colleagues so you can discuss your experiences.
Sonia gave a single firm nod, her gaze locked on the hearers. I'd love to talk to them. The last of the pizza crust sat on a paper plate between Sonia and Anna. The warmth of the pizzeria was a welcome shield against the biting cold that rattled the shop's windows.
So we really gonna have a spa weekend after you get back from Paris? At the St. Regis. You for real?
Anna asked, her eyes still wide with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Sonia dabbed grease from the corner of her mouth with a napkin, giving her cousin a nod. For real, a whole weekend of massages, facials, fluffy robes, and food not served to us on paper plates. Sonia leaned back in the booth. We'll just kick back and be pampered. Anna laughed.
And I still can't believe you're going off to Paris. That's like a dream come true.
Sonia's smile faded, her own enthusiasm not quite matching her cousin's. It's just some school thing. Javier bought me the tickets months ago. But to be honest, I'm not really feeling it. I'm looking forward to the spa weekend and way more. Anna's expression softened while understanding.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too, but you really didn't have to do all this. The St. Regis is a 5-star hotel, so I know it had to cost you way too much.
I got a discount, Sonia smiled. Luis is always using that place for his events, and I'm always the one who books them. So the hotel manager gave me a real low price. Anna just shook her head laughing.
All right then, I'll take it,
she said, sliding out of the booth.
I gotta get back to the bodega. Thanks again.
She leaned down for a quick hug before bundling up and heading out. Sonia savored one last bite of crispy pizza crust, then slid into the wool coat she still hadn't returned to Nate. As she began to button it up, she noticed a familiar figure walking past the wide glass window. As usual, his stride easy and confident, his head turned, and his eyes met with hers. Then he smiled wide, and before she knew it, he was turning around, making his way over to the pizzeria. The tiny bell over the door, jingling as Rico dipped inside, heading straight for her booth. Her heart did a little jump, not from joy, but from surprise, as she offered a weak, polite smile.
I'm not stalking you, I promise.
Rico laughed, holding his hands up in mock surrender.
I was just passing by. I'm happy I saw you, though. I thought for sure I'd leave without being able to say goodbye.
Sonia's eyebrow raised in confusion. You leaving? He nodded, his expression turning more serious.
After you and me met up at the park, I spoke to my connect who got me in, and I'll be heading back down in a couple of months.
You didn't change your mind after that and decide to stay? No, Rico looked confused.
Nah, the only reason I came back to New York was to be with you. And since that's not happening, I'm going back, unless you change your mind.
Sonia smiled weakly.
I'm just joking, Sonny. I heard you, and I saw how serious you was. Jesus is your focus now. I wish things could have worked out different. This wasn't my plan. But I can roll with the punches. But I'm gonna miss you, Sonny.
Rico, I meant what I said that day at the park. I really do worry about you, and I pray you can let go of that stuff you're into. Give Christ a chance, she said in a plea. He shrugged, standing up.
Sonny, Jesus is not for everybody.
Then he bent down, kissed her cheek warmly, and said goodbye. Sonia stared at him as he made his way up the street, the gears in her mind spinning. Rico had called his connect after their meetup at the park and seemed just as accepting of her ending things as he did back then. His tone was definite, like the decision was his and his alone. Then why had Javier told her the opposite? Made it seem like Rico had suddenly become a problem that he was going to fix. Some loose cannon he had to force out of the country. But Rico was speaking of it like a settled plan he had made a while ago. The relief she should have felt from knowing that Rico was leaving was replaced by a nagging feeling. Sonia knew for sure. Javier hadn't been protecting her. He had been playing her. The day before the big dinner party in Connecticut, Sonia was at Tony's house, standing in the dining room with Nate. The place was a maze of cardboard boxes as they packed everything up to take to Midtown. Everything in the new office was set up, and it would be their last evening working out of the house. There would be no more late nights, stuffed in that tiny dining room, working on top of each other and bumping heads at the corkboard. But Sonia was gonna miss it. Nate stood in front of her, pushing her hair back and tucking it behind her ear. His fingertips brushing lightly over her earlobe as he adjusted the earpiece that kept slipping out each time he put it into place. I spoke to Javier at the office the other day, and he was definitely lying about how he knew you were my PI, Sonia announced. Nate's hands paused, listening with hard eyes as she continued. I asked him how he knew who you were, and he lied and said he overheard you telling someone you were a PI.
Well, you already know you can't be trusted,
he said flatly. True, because then Javier told me that Rico was trying to stay in the city, but he wasn't going back to South America because he wasn't over me and was still trying to work things out. Javier said he would take care of it and get Rico to leave, like he was doing me a favor. Then I ran into Rico, and he told me he'd been set up everything and would be leaving in a few months.
Rico could be lying.
He seemed so sincere, and I know that's not saying much, but I really think he's leaving and got the point. The same way he was after we spoke at the park. Like he wasn't happy about it, but that he got it. And when he saw me, he wasn't on some let's fix things and get back together. It was just real casual. She stared at the wall over Nate's shoulder like she was replaying the scene. I think Javier lied to me.
That definitely could be the case. He could be trying to manipulate you, act like he's fixing a problem that he caused himself.
Right. Trying to make it seem like, with him, I'm safe. When he's the reason I feel like I'm in danger in the first place. Nate gave her a nod as he carefully placed paperwork into a box. Sonia's mind drifted to Javier being there for her grandmother, stepping in where her father used to be, and promising to keep Sonia safe from the same unknown shooters his uncle was keeping out on the streets. She let out a heavy sigh, then tucked her hair behind her ear, knocking the earpiece out.
Sonny, you can't be touching your hair at the party tomorrow.
Nate swiped up the earpiece.
We need to be able to communicate with you.
He tossed the piece onto the table, then Sonia nodded, taking a seat. As Nate carefully placed the manila folder into a box, he glanced over at Sonia, who seemed gone, back in that place in her head. He spoke again, changing the subject completely, trying to lighten the mood.
How was dinner with my sister?
Real good. It was some of the best food I ever tasted. She said in a flat tone, but managing a weak smile. It was the first time I had keep it.
You serious? How could you never have keep it before?
Sonia laughed, because it's not like there's a Syrian restaurant on every corner. Nahira made falafel too. It was all so good.
Sound like you had a good time.
I did, but your brother-in-law was trying to make it seem like I was crazy the whole night. Trying to make it seem like I didn't see what I know I saw.
The thief doesn't think you're crazy. Some people just get scared of that kind of thing, so they try to explain it away.
I still think you should have come. You could have backed me up about the thing in the house.
Don't worry about what other people think. We know.
He assured her. Then he turned, clearing more paperwork from the table and saying,
And I would have went. My sister invited me, but I had a date.
A date? She asked weakly. He nodded. Oh, so how did your date go?
I'm not about to talk to you about my personal life.
Why not? You know all about my personal life. I just told you some very personal stuff.
The only reason we talk about any of that is because I'm working on your case.
I didn't tell you about my personal relationships with Rico and Javier because you're working on my case. I told you some of that because we're friends. She said like it was obvious.
Sonny, we are not friends. I'm your boss.
Nate, you are not my boss. She pushed out a harsh, sarcastic laugh.
I sign your paychecks, and I own the agency. So, I am.
I don't look at you like that. I see us more like co-workers, partners. He laughed too and shook his head.
We are not partners.
Well, either way, I look at us as friends. I call and text you more than anybody else. I consider you a good friend, one of my closest friends.
Sonny, that's sad.
It is sort of sad. She laughed weakly. I'm not saying I don't have any friends. I got Jasmine too. You know the story with Yanni. We getting back on track, but we hardly speak. My friend Ebony is back in my life now, thankfully. But we're still sort of taking small steps for now. He gave her a sympathetic look.
You should make some friends at school.
It's sort of hard for me to make friends. Always has been. Her voice trailed off a little, and Nate looked over at her. I think sometimes I come off a little weird to people. And it doesn't help I got a bit of a reputation on campus.
What reputation?
Crazy girl with the ghosts. She rolled her eyes. Nate's eyes met hers, and the corner of his mouth twitched, like he was trying not to laugh. It's not funny, Nate. She laughed.
You're not crazy, Sonny.
He taped up the very last box. Then Sonia shot him a small, sarcastic smile, asking, So you really not gonna tell me what happened with your date, after all the stuff I told you about Rico and Javier? Nate let out a quiet breath, still turned away from her, and now labeling in a box with a Sharpie.
She just seemed way too interested in the people I know in the music business and who I could connect her with.
What about Nicole? He turned around with a confused expression. Nahira told me y'all were married. Why'd you two get divorced? Nate shook his head, but he couldn't believe he was talking to Sonia about any of this. There were reluctance. He gave her a vague.
Because we got married for all the wrong reasons.
What reasons?
I think that's enough sharing for the night.
Nahira made it seem like it didn't work out because of your faith. Said something about your worldviews not aligning.
Why was she telling you all this?
He turns away, getting back to work. It just came up. Nate sighed.
Me and Nicole didn't see eye to eye on a bunch of stuff. Our morals were one. She seemed to be fine with what her brother did. And I can't be with someone who thinks a human life is disposable. There are no disposable people. After finding out what Jay did, I went to her thinking we had the same reaction. But she just made up excuses for him. Trying to make it seem like killing somebody was justified. And that's not normal. Then it was like it all just clicked. The way she was speaking so casual about a human life being taken. It sounded like the songs we was making. Jay would get in the booth, talking about dropping bodies like it was nothing, and I never even gave it a second thought. It was like I was numb to it too. I told myself, it's just art. Jay is just playing a character. But it wasn't no character. It was him. He meant it all. Then people pop in his CD, and they think it's just entertainment too. Until they are starting to look at murder the same way he does. The same way Nicole started to. Jay and these other rappers are spreading his way of thinking to the whole world. Got people dancing and singing along to murder.
It's demonic. Sonia's voice was low. It's a spirit of death that's everywhere now. In the movies, on the radio. Life doesn't mean anything. If somebody is in your way, just erase them. No second thought. Nate's voice dropped, heavy and sure as he said,
And it's not gonna stop. It's only gonna get worse. It was all written. In the end, hearts will grow cold and people are gonna be filled with hate.
Feels like the end is now sometimes. I mean, somebody shot me. They killed my father, and we didn't even do anything. Her voice cracked. Everything that happened with Lucky and Blue, she loved him and he killed her. Killed his own baby. Her voice lowered, almost to a mumble, like she was speaking to herself.
He's locked up now, and he'll be going away for a real long time. The detectives told me his baby's mother agreed to testify against him. He gave her all the jewelry that belonged to Lucky after the murder, acting like he was some kind of big shot buying her gifts, when he had just swiped her stuff from the safe. Stuff that he claimed the robbers took when they first questioned him. He's not getting out of this.
She nodded. Finally, something was going right. Blue was off the street, and her father's killers would be next. She knew it. The next thing Sonia knew, the room went dark, and Teresa and Tony were walking out of the kitchen. Tony carried a double-layer cake with pale yellow frosting, and a bunch of candles lit up his face. What is this? Sonia laughed.
It's a limoncello cake.
Teresa explained.
I remember you saying when it was your favorite. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Sonia smiled as Tony set the cake onto the table. She blew out the candles, then the lights flicked back on, and Nate handed her a small box. Inside was a little wooden cross necklace. She pulled it out, looking it over closely with a smile. Thank you, Nate.
It's nothing,
He said with a casual shrug. She ran her fingers over the necklace, noticing tiny carvings in the cross. What language is this?
Arabic. It says, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
I love it. It's really beautiful.
I bought them a couple of years ago when I went to Syria. Gave some to my sisters and mother, and had a couple of extra.
He handed a box to Teresa.
I appreciate you letting us take over your home.
Thanks, Nate. But it was no problem. I loved having you all over here. Brought a little life to this old house.
You'll come by the new office to visit us, right?
Oh, I'll be down there often. Tony told me it's a lot nicer than the digs you had out in Chinatown. And you make sure you come out to Queens to visit us. I still need to show you how to make that pasta con the sardi.
The dinner party wasn't in a mansion. It was in the castle. The biggest house Sonia had ever seen, with one main structure in the middle and a bunch of smaller houses attached to the sides. Sonia just knew this had to be a compound. If the seating arrangements were based on importance, it made sense that Sonia was at the tail end of the table, on the opposite side from Luis and Rita, who were seated right next to the head of the table with the host. Sonia tried to get a glimpse of the dark-haired man, pointing her little brooch his way. But in addition to the dim lighting and distance, the big red rose centerpiece was blocking her view. During the long walk from the car to the house, Rita had explained to Sonia that the party was being thrown by one of the wealthiest men in the country. A man who owned half the stores in every mall in America, from clothing stores that sell overpriced t-shirts and jeans to stores that sold high-priced, low-quality lingerie. Sonia felt a knot in her stomach, thinking of all the years she and her friends spent so much money on vanilla-scented lotion from a store owned by a real-life monster. The polished dining room table that stretched out longer than a city block was topped with way more food than those guests could eat. Even so, servers glided around in silence, delivering even more food. Tiny roasted birds on silver platters, skin shiny like lacquered wood. And in the middle of it all, a whole roasted pig with a candied apple stuffed in its mouth. Sonia avoided both the swine and the birds, opting for the sides, which seemed less frightening. Some little fancy potatoes and cheese sauce, scallops, and these little crab cakes. While she was trying to eat, she was also trying to aim her little brooch camera at everyone's face, all the while with Nate's voice in her ear, reminding her that she wasn't there alone, and joking that she should bring him some of those crab cakes. Later, after dinner, the party moved to the den, filled with cigar smoke and forced laughter, and Sonia finally got a close-up shot of the host.
Sonia, this is Stanton.
Rita smiled as Stanton shook Sonia's hand.
And Stanton, this is my assistant, Sonia. Thanks again for adding her to the list last minute.
Please, Rita. Anything for you and Luis. You know I owe you guys my life.
He laughed a little. Sonia wondered what Luis and Rita had done to save him. Cover up a couple of murders he had committed to keep his little trafficking ring going.
So, Assistant Sonia, how are you enjoying the party?
It's been fun. She smiled. The food was perfect, and your home is amazing.
Thank you, I try.
He laughed. He had the kind of crooked, coffee-stained teeth that money should have fixed, but when you're that rich, you don't have to. After Stanton took Rita by the arm and drifted away, Sonia swept out, finding herself in a long, quiet hallway. The only sounds were the whirring of her brooch camera and Nate's voice in her ear telling her to go back. She clutched the brooch, pointing it at nightmarish paintings, lots of pieces featuring goats, goat horns, or men who were half goat. "You see this weird stuff?" she asked in a hushed tone, aiming the pen toward the weirdest painting she'd ever seen. Some goat woman sitting in the bleak, desolate field.
We don't need you playing Inspector Gadget. You don't even know what you're looking for.
Nate huffed. She was about to respond to Nate's voice in her ear when another voice close behind her asked,
"Are you lost?"
She jumped, surprised, then turned around to see a blind man smiling at her.
"I'm just joking,"
he said in a teasing tone, then pointed at her.
"Don't tell me your name. It's on the tip of my tongue. Begins with Net. Sonia."
He said it like he won a prize. She smiled, giving him a weak nod.
"I'm Stanton's assistant. It's my job to remember all of our guests' names, and usually I have to linger nearby and remind him of who everyone is."
The boy laughed.
"You were added to the list last second. Rita called, asking for a favor."
He smiled, I heard Stanton threw really good parties, and I had to check it out myself. Then he took Sonia's hand, sandwiching it between both of his, shaking it warmly.
I'm Mark.
Nice to meet you. She nodded, wondering when he'd release her hand. This house is so beautiful. Every time I walk further up the hall, I see something even more interesting. She glanced up at the creepy painting.
Yeah, this place has some real gems.
He finally let go of her hand, but quickly looped his arm around hers.
But the really good stuff is behind the doors.
Yeah? You think you can give me a tour?
I'd love to give you a tour.
Mark said, already opening a nearby door.
This is one of Stanton's studies.
Sonia stared around the boring-looking room. It was only a desk and a few books on pedestals, and a lot more creepy paintings. She walked around the space, side by side with Mark, pretending to be in awe, listening as he went on about loving, working, and living there. Do a lot of people live here?
Almost 20 of us.
Sonia knew it. This was the compound.
There's a very large staff needed to keep up with a house this size. There's the butlers, the drivers, the maids, the chefs, the maintenance staff, and the dog nannies.
Then they stopped beside a pedestal with a book prominently displayed. Sonia read the title, Rituals and Sex Magic. Magic spelled with a K. She stared at the strange book displayed so boldly right in the middle of the room. What is this?
A first edition book by Lester Crowley.
He said with excitement. She forced a smile, asking, Sex magic?
Yeah, it's a real esoteric practice where sex is used to grant the desires of the participants. There's power in the act of sex, and that power can be harnessed when done correctly. Goes all the way back to the ancient times, but not a lot of people like to talk about it.
I learned all about Baal worship in school. She nodded.
So you know it's real.
He said with excited eyes.
I had no idea until I got here. Thought it was all nonsense. But this magic is the real deal. Not that hocus pocus Hollywood stuff. When you practice it correctly, it brings guaranteed results.
He said with a grin.
That's how Stanton has everything he does. He practices it faithfully and even helps others practice it too.
The sex magic? She tried to hide her disgust. He nodded. What kind of people does he help?
You gotta be in his inner circle, or know somebody who is. Mostly just people who can give them something in return.
People with money? She asked, with a knowing tone.
Money, power, influence.
What about rappers and singers?
Yep, he's helped a bunch of them. If they're open-minded enough, which most of them are, he'll pretty much help any of them.
What about politicians? Sonia asked with a grin. It took Mark a second to catch on. Then he laughed and waved his hand.
Your bosses? No. They have a different kind of relationship. They aren't as open. Maybe if Luis was more open, he'd finally get that seat in Senate.
Sonia laughed too, like Mark was onto something. Then he added,
If you're close enough to Rita and Luis, maybe you can speak to them about it. You seem pretty open-minded.
He shot Sonia a look. Then she heard Nate in her ear, telling her to cut the tour short. She forced a laugh and asked, So he helps people practice it here in the mansion?
Here, his other place.
Mark said vaguely. Sonia wanted to follow up and ask about his other homes, but before she knew it, they were being interrupted.
Here you are.
Stanton stepped into the study.
Mark, we've been looking all over for you. They need you in the kitchen.
Mark gave him a nod, then lowered his gaze like he was afraid to look into Stanton's eyes. Sonia tensed as Stanton walked over to her. Mark was just giving me a tour, but I can head back to the party.
No need to leave. Mark will be back in a second. It was a quick fix, really. I just didn't feel like getting my hands dirty.
He laughed. Sonia wondered if that applied to hiring a hitman and leaving Luis to clean up this mess too. Stanton ran a hand over the sex magic book in a weird, seductive way.
You ever heard of this?
Mark was just telling me about it. He said the magic is real.
Very real.
He flipped through the book just as Luis entered the room.
Sonia, there you are. Rita and I have been looking for you.
Luis waved her over like he was trying to get her away from the man. Excuse me. She smiled at Stanton, apologetically. Once in the hall, Luis smirked and said,
Sonia, you need to be careful around some of these people. They can be a little strange.
The main stairways are located at the rear of each deck, and a small safety stairway is located forward on each deck. Life jackets are stored in overhead racks on the first and second decks, and in storage boxes on the top deck. Instructions for donning life jackets are posted around the vessel.
The next day, Sonia and Nate met with Joy, one of Brianna's old co-workers from a few years ago. The meeting took place on the Staten Island ferry, where they were the only people crazy enough to brave the open deck, as a biting wind made the frigid day feel even colder. Joy was a petite girl with a round face and big eyes that made her look even younger than she already was. Thanks so much for speaking to us, Sonia said, breaking the silence.
I didn't really want to, but Brianna basically begged me.
She rolled her tired-looking eyes. I promise this won't take too long. We just wanted to show you some pictures, ask you a few questions. Sonia assured her, as Nate handed Joy some photos from the dinner the night before. She looked down at the pictures of the castle, her brow furrowed in confusion. You recognize this place? Joy shook her head. Then Nate spoke.
Brianna said you used to stay at the compound. You sure you never been here before?
I'm positive. This looks nothing like the compound.
Can you describe it?
Lots of glass. Like, it looked new. Not old like this place. It was in a desert.
A desert here in the U.S.? You don't remember the state?
Not really.
She sighed, then said in a lower tone.
It was the one where prostitution is legal. I remember that because one of the older girls told us that what we were doing was legal only if we did it out there. We didn't know that she was lying and that we had to be over 18 for what we were doing to be legal. I think she told us that so we wouldn't think we could go to the cops.
Now that you know the truth, do you want to talk to the police? Her big eyes bugged out, now filled with fear.
No, I don't. Those people would have me killed.
They threaten you?
No, but they told us stories about other girls who did and said they're still missing to this day.
Sonia glanced over at Nate, who was staring at her too. Then Sonia flipped to the next page.
That's one of the bosses right there, though.
She pointed out Stanton, with his greaseball slicked back hair and raggedy teeth. Then Nate stepped over with his phone flipped open, asking if she recognized Finkelstein. Joy nodded, eyes moving over the posh-looking man, who looked like he was headed to golf.
He's the one with the eyeliner. I went there once, but only did massages for the gas.
What did they have you doing out in Nevada? She looked from Sonia to Nate, who took the hint and headed inside. Before they met up with Joy, Nate warned Sonia that she may hear some heavy stuff, but Sonia wasn't expecting that. Joy didn't go into graphic detail, But she didn't have to. Just hearing that the younger girls were preferred and that the encounters were caught on video made Sonia nauseous. Joy, we're gonna get these people locked up.
You won't be able to. You have no idea who they are.
We will. I promise you that. But we need some kind of evidence. Do you remember anything about where you stayed out in Nevada? She shook her head. Was it a city? Was it in a suburb?
The place was mostly just desert, a bunch of sand.
As they were about to part ways, Joy added one last detail, her voice barely a whisper.
There was a landing strip, a long runway for the private planes.
She paused, looking at Sonia with a haunted expression.
That's how they flew in the men.
On the ferry ride back to Manhattan, Nate grabbed Sonia a cup of hot cocoa from the snack stand, but she was so sick to her stomach she couldn't even take a sip. They sat in silence for half the ride. Then Sonia finally said, Joy doesn't think we can get anybody arrested.
But we will.
How are you so sure? We don't even have any evidence, and they got people like Louise keeping them free.
We're building a good case against them, and we're getting closer to solving your father's murder. Plus, we ain't dealing with the local cops. Once we get the evidence, we'll go straight to the feds.
Nate noticed Sonia's expression still hard as she stared away from him with doubt. Then trying to lift her mood, Nate informed her that his sister had texted him and invited him out to dinner, suggesting that she could come too. I'm not hungry.
Boy, you don't have to eat. You can just come along where we can all talk. You and my sister always seem to have a good time together.
He suggested, knowing that leaving her alone with her thoughts wasn't an option. The spot they met Nahira at wasn't fancy. It was just some old school seafood joint downtown, but kind with checkered tablecloths, probably older than Sonia and Nate. While Nate and Nahira chatted and devoured their fried clams and fish, Sonia put shrimp around her plate, her mind still back on that boat, a sick feeling still kicking around in her gut.
Sonia, you gotta come over to dinner again. Asif and I had a great time.
I would love that. Then Nahira smiled, looking over at Nate.
And we would love if you could join us too. Sonia and I could have used you the other night. You know how skeptical Asif can be when it comes to the spiritual world. We spent the whole night trying to explain to him that the other realm breaking through the deserve is a very real thing.
Nate gave her a nod, agreeing to come. Then the table fell silent as Nate motioned to the waiter for the check. That's when Sonia pulled the stack of photos from her messenger bag, flipping until she found the photo of that book. She handed Nahira the printout of the creepy sex magic book sitting on Stanton's pedestal like some kind of unholy Bible. Have you ever heard of this man?
Aleister Crowley. Oh yeah, he was a famous occultist, influenced by Madame Blavatsky. You remember her, right?
The lady who channeled demons to create the law of attraction doctrine. Nahira nodded.
Crowley took her teachings and ran wild with them. He worshipped Satan too, and Crowley even called himself the Beast. Came up with some sick ritualistic stuff involving kids.
Sonia looked over at Nate with a frown.
Aleister Crowley is one of the main reasons the occult exploded here in the States back in the 70s. He spread it to a lot of influential people, actors, singers like the Beatles. I've even seen him praised by a lot of rappers recently.
After what I heard about so many of them, I'm not surprised.
It's an old evil.
Nahira said quietly.
It doesn't invent anything new. It just finds different faces to wear and new music to dance to.
Then Nahira sighed, pushing the photo back towards Sonia with her fingertips like she didn't want to touch it anymore. That following Monday, Rita called Sonia back into her office.
Have a seat. How'd you like dinner the other night?
Rita smiled wide. I loved it. Thanks again.
No problem. I'm happy you had fun.
Then her face went serious as she said,
Louise told me that he had to rescue you from Stanton the other night. Sorry, he can be a little weird.
Oh, it's no problem. He was strange, but he was harmless. Rita nodded with a smile.
Well, the reason I called you in here is to give you your Christmas bonus and to inform you that I'm also gifting you some time off.
Sonia smiled weakly in shock. What?
Yeah, I figured you enjoyed 3-4 weeks off. You can have some downtime before you fly out to Paris next week. So don't worry about coming to the office for the rest of the week. And of course, this is all with pay.
But I don't mind coming in, Sonia said, mind still stuck when investigating.
You're so ambitious all of a sudden. We'll be back up and running before you know it. Enjoy your trip to Paris and take lots of pictures.
Rita laughed. Sonia left with a suspicious feeling. What was all that about being ambitious all of a sudden? She wondered. As she passed a rushed-looking Louise in the hallway, her suspicion deepened. Were they on to her? Maybe she had asked too many questions at that dinner. Or maybe she'd been too eager around the office. Sonia burst into Nate's office, all wild-eyed and panicked. I think they're on to me, Nate, she said, before noticing the couple sitting with Nate, staring at her like she had two heads. Sonia dropped her gaze, feeling crazy. Then Nate politely wrapped up his business and showed them out. The second the door clicked shut, he shot her a look. Sorry. She held out her phone like it was a bomb. I would have called you, but I think my cell phone might be tapped. It's a business phone from Rita. He sighed, just as calm as always.
Sonny, relax. I'm always vague when we talk, just in case of that. But I'm pretty sure they're not tapping your phone.
Well, Rita just told me that she's giving me some time off, acting like it's part of some kind of Christmas bonus. Nate, they know I'm looking into them.
Don't get paranoid. Is this out of character for Rita?
I guess she can be thoughtful sometimes, Sonia admitted.
Then take the time off and relax. I think you could use some rest.
She shook her head. I'll take time off after we solve the case. We got way too much work to do for me to be at home in bed. I'll come here instead.
You can come in this week,
he said, shuffling through some paperwork. Next week, too. I'm not trying to go on that trip to Paris. I really don't feel like being around a bunch of people I barely know.
I'm flying out to Syria to see family next week, and Tony's going on vacation.
She sighed, then, trying to fish for an invite, she mentioned, I have always wanted to go to Syria. He made a face like she said something crazy.
Why? I wouldn't even go if I didn't have family there.
Syria was one of the first Christian nations, she said, voice filled with excitement. I always wanted to walk where Jesus walked, go to the places where he performed his miracles, see Damascus. Nate smiled slightly, seeing the now familiar excitement in her eyes whenever she talked about Jesus. Then, knowing she was looking for an invite, he shut it down quick.
Syria hasn't been a Christian nation for hundreds of years now. My parents had to flee, and my father went back and ended up getting killed. I don't take my mother or sisters, and I'm definitely not taking you.
His words hit her hard. If it's that dangerous, maybe you shouldn't go either.
I've got family to check on.
Call or send him an email.
In the countryside, where there's barely any electricity.
And you're not scared that something is going to happen to you.
If something happens, it happens.
So it's okay for you to be all fearless, putting your life in danger. But you told me not to be stupid when I told you I didn't care about the consequences.
You think me going over there is stupid?
She shrugged, definitely reckless. He saw the worry in her eyes, and his voice grew steady.
I'll be fine. I'll go every year.
She forced a weak smile, then trying to lighten the mood, she said, "So my best friend is leaving me and going all the way to Syria." He cracked a smile.
Oh, I've been promoted to best friend.
Seeing the sadness creep back into her eyes, Nate said in a warm tone,
I can't take you to Syria, but if you want to change of ticket, we can go to Jerusalem and Bethlehem.
"You serious?" Her heart jumped. He nodded, surprised by how hyped she was.
I'll be on that side of the world anyway. I'll show you around. Then after you fly home, I'll head to Syria.
"Can we visit the Dead Sea too?"
Jordan River too if you want.
"Thank you," she said with a new brightness in her eyes. "I'll change my ticket tonight." Sonia's 11-hour flight to Tel Aviv was its own adventure. The anticipation had her wired, and the entire red-eye flight, Sonia just reread passages in the Bible, her fingers tracing over the read words of Jesus. Her heart filled with excitement at the thought of connecting with the places where those words were spoken. As soon as she stepped out of the airport, the air felt different, cool, thick, and ancient, and her mind immediately felt at peace. Nate, who had flown out the night before, was waiting for her at Ben Gurion, ready to chauffeur her around in the Jeep he rented. He hopped out, grabbed her bag, and tossed it in the back.
You did any rest on your flight?
No, I was too excited to sleep. She smiled, gawking up at palm trees lining the road. "I can't believe I'm here." They just smiled, opening the door, then ushered her inside so their trip could begin. Driving through Tel Aviv was straight up chaos, but Nate handled the traffic like a pro, weaving through the streets like he was born there. They left the New World City behind, heading for Jerusalem, and it was like stepping through a time machine. Suddenly, it was all ancient stone, the air buzzing with 1,000 different languages. Hebrew, Arabic, English, and a bunch of others that Sonia didn't even recognize. After a quick stop at Sonia's guest house in the Christian quarters, they dropped off her bags, then headed over to the gates of hell. Sonia trailed behind Nate and the tour group as they stepped over to the gates of hell. Their tour guide, Simon, pointed up at this cave that looked like some beast had chewed a hole out the side of the cliff.
This is where the ancient Romans believed the underworld broke through to our world, the gates of hell. It's the spiritual center of false god worship. Lots of demonic activity took place here. One of the false gods they worshipped here was Pan, a half-man, half-goat creature. People came here offering their sacrifices, goats, children, whatever they could afford.
"What do you mean afford?" Sonia asked. "They were buying children to sacrifice?" Simon nodded.
Yeah,
People who had less money would sacrifice the goats, while the people with the real money, they would sacrifice babies. They'd pay poor families for the babies they couldn't afford.
He pointed to a shallow pit below the mouth of the cave.
They would throw live babies into water that used to be down there. They believed this would appease Pan and bring them blessings.
Then he pointed out a few flat stone surfaces on the other side of the cave, and Simon let out a heavy sigh.
Oh, and over here are the platforms of the dancing goats. Some very sick, twisted stuff went on over here. One platform held an altar where the goats would mate with goats. Then on the other platform, that's where men would mate with goats, right out here in public for everyone to see. Some very sick rituals.
As Simon led the group away, Nate noticed Sonia's look of disgust and pulled her aside. Then in a low, firm voice, he said,
"Now you see why Jesus brought his disciples here, to this cesspool of evil, to prove a point. His church is stronger than the worst evil Satan has to offer. He wanted to show them that his church could overcome the worst darkness, and that we don't need to fear the wickedness. It's our job now. We're his light, and we're here to expose the darkness."
She let out a deep breath, and the knot in her stomach loosened. We'll be the light, expose everything, and stand against the wickedness of the world. That short week in the Holy Land was a lot to take in, so much to see and feel, and so little time. One day, they walked the path Jesus traveled to his crucifixion, carrying his heavy cross. Then later, they stood in the Garden of Gethsemane, where ancient olive trees with gnarled trunks resemble old men's arthritic hands twisted in prayer. The peaceful atmosphere was heavy with history. Sonia pictured the blood Jesus sweat in anguish, dealing with the crushing weight of the world's sin, and tears filled her eyes. Jesus prayed here, knowing what was coming, Sonia whispered to Nate. As they walked, their tour guide pointed to a tree, its branches covered with viciously sharp thorns, long and massive. He held a thorn out, explaining that those paintings of Jesus with his crown of thorns were usually all wrong. The crown wasn't made of something like the stems of roses with small spikes. The needles looked like tiny daggers that would go straight through your finger if you weren't careful. To lift their spirits after the heaviness of that day's tour, Nate insisted she experience real Israeli food and took her to the Yehuda market, which was the complete opposite of the tranquil garden. The place was loud, with the sounds of vendors hawking the merchandise, people haggling prices, and radios wearing. Sonia followed Nate to a small stand where he ordered them food in Arabic. Then the vendor stuffed a fluffy pita with crispy falafel, hummus, tahini, pickles, and a mixed colorful salad. Her eyes lit up after she took her first bite.
"It's good, right?"
She nodded as an explosion of flavors hit her taste buds. A combination unlike anything she'd ever experienced. On Sunday, Nate took Sonia to an Assyrian Orthodox church tucked away in the quiet corner of the old city, and it was different. The men and women sat on separate sides of the church, and before the service, Nate bought Sonia a small lace scarf from a street vendor, informing her that she should cover her hair. The priest was an elderly man with a long gray beard and kind eyes. First he preached in English, then switched over to Aramaic, the same language Christ spoke. It was weird to Sonia. She felt a real connection there. Not only to Jesus, but to the people who've been worshiping him for ages, in ways that were both familiar to her and brand new. Feeling a deep sense of connection, belonging to God's diverse family of believers, all united by their love for Christ. After church, as they walked through the narrow streets of the old city, Sonia asked, "Is your church back in New York like that one?"
I'll have a church there. I stopped going a while ago. But yeah, it was pretty much the same.
"Why'd you stop going?" He shrugged.
Life, I guess.
"I know what you mean. I only started going back a few months ago, and I didn't realize how much I missed it." She smiled. "You want to visit my church on Sunday after you get back? It's the Baptist church, not Orthodox, but my pastor always has a good message. And we're Bible-based," she said with her hopeful excitement.
Yeah, we can do that.
Nate smiled, giving her a nod. The next day, on what would be the last day of their trip, Sonia and Nate went out to the Judean desert, where Sonia let Nate talk her into riding a camel. They sat high on the swaying animals, moving smoothly across the sand. Sonia looked over at Nate, who looked more at ease on his camel than she felt on hers. His usual guarded expression seemed softer now, with the hint of a smile on his face as they rode. After Sonia finally managed to get off the gangly animal, they went on a quick hike up to a high cliff, sitting together right on the edge, just letting their legs dangle above the desert floor below. She ran her hands over the rough, rocky ground. Jesus had been in that same desert, fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. "This has been so much fun. Everything has been perfect,"
Even the camels.
he asked with a laugh. Sonia laughed too, giving him a nod. "And I haven't been on a hike in so long."
You used to hike.
"Why do you say it like that?"
You just don't seem like the outdoorsy type. You seem a little prissy.
"Prissy?" she laughed.
I'm not saying like it's a bad thing, but when you first showed up to my office, he was wearing a fur coat.
She laughed, rolling her eyes. "I used to go on hikes with my father all the time. We used to go on bike rides, too. Out in his nature park in Hempstead. That's where he grew up." Sonia was smiling to herself, like she was watching memories replay in her mind. "He'd tell me there were trolls under this bridge by the creek, trying to scare me and get me to run whenever we crossed it. He was real goofy sometimes. I think that's where I get it from." She laughed.
He sounds like he was a lot of fun.
He was. We would watch sci-fi movies together. Those were his favorite. But my mother hated when he let me watch them. She thought I'd be too scared. I wasn't ever scared, though, because I had my father there. And to me, he was the strongest man in the world. And I just knew he'd always keep me safe. She nodded, then asked, "Were you and your father close?"
Yeah, he was my best friend. He encouraged me to make music when everybody else told me it was a waste of time. More importantly, he taught me how a man was supposed to be.
Nate had a look of deep respect.
How to work hard, be brave, be a provider, a protector. He rescued my mother and sister from persecution by getting them out of Damascus. I mean, he didn't just move them, he saved their lives. My parents saw their church get bombed, had neighbors disappear. He got them safe to America.
He sounds so brave. Then her smile faded. Remember how he met his end. And he went back despite it all to make sure the rest of his family was still good.
Yup, he knew the risk and he went anyway. Then it finally happened. He got stopped by some Sunnis who asked him if he was a Muslim. He told them that he was a Christian and they killed him. But he went to his death, never backing down from his faith.
He was speaking with pride instead of sadness, while Sonia was almost in tears.
I haven't talked about my father in a long time.
He thought out loud. Me either. It felt good to talk about him. How old were you when your father died?
17, just like you. That's part of the reason I went so hard on your case. When you came in there, something about you reminded me of myself.
Thanks for going so hard on the case. Without you helping, I wouldn't have a single clue about what happened. He waved her away like it was nothing. I still don't think it's a coincidence I saw your ad online, she said, smiling wide. I think there was some kind of divine intervention going on. She paused and a brief silence fell between them before she asked them in a serious tone, Nate, if I tell you something, can you promise not to look at me like I'm crazy? He gave her a sincere nod. I've been here before. He looked at her confused. In my dreams, in this desert, it's all so familiar. Then it was like she was staring at a screen, replaying her dream. At first, I was in a big, beautiful field. Everything was all peaceful and calm. Then, these 3 wolves popped up out of nowhere and started chasing me down. I ran out of the field and ended up in a place that looked just like this. Lots of sand and rocks, but a lot more scary. The wolves got close up on me, like I felt them on the backs of my legs. Then as I tried to outrun them, I slipped off a cliff. Nate's eyes lingered on hers as she stared ahead, still watching her internal screen. I didn't fall though. I was able to hold on to the edge, she said, her fingers digging into the sandy ground between them like she was holding on for her life. Then those 3 wolves came right up to me and turned into 3 tall shadows. And just when I was starting to lose my grip, the shadows just disappeared. I was left all alone, clutching onto the rocks, thinking I was about to fall to my death. Then this man came over to me. He had a wooden staff, and he was dressed in all white. Clothes so bright, it was like they were glowing. Before he even reached out to me, I already felt saved. Like his presence alone was all the comfort I needed. Nate had this small smile as he listened. Then he picked me up, carried me through this desert and back to that grassy field, she said, looking completely at peace. I can't explain it, but the dream felt more real than us sitting here right now. And after I woke up, I felt completely cared for, protected, and loved. Nate gave her a knowing nod.
Jesus always goes after his lost sheep.
They were silent for a while. Then out of the corner of Sonia's eye, she noticed him staring over at her again, and she started to laugh. Nate, why do you keep looking at me like I'm crazy? You've been doing it this entire trip.
I'm not looking at you like you're crazy. You just seem so happy. The complete opposite of how you've been back in New York.
I've been feeling a lot better since I got here. Things were getting real heavy back there. He nodded. Then, after a short pause, he said,
I know you want to keep investigating, and I love having you at the agency, but I don't like how it's affecting you. You're changing, and it's not for the better.
What you mean by that? She asked, genuinely confused. He shook his head and looked away from her.
You just seem so angry all the time, Mel. And I know it's because you've been exposed to all of its darkness.
We're called to shine our light in the darkness, though.
Yeah, but your light is being dimmed. And I don't like that you working at the agency is the reason for that.
Working there is not the reason. It's everything that I found out about Luis and Javier, too.
Yeah, well, working in this case can't be helpful with your mental.
You sound like you're trying to fire me. Her voice was heavy again.
I'm not trying to fire you, but I do want to put you on desk duty. You stay in the office from now on. No more field work.
But I can't get anything done staying off the field and away from the action.
It's either that or nothing, and I'm serious. The closer we get to solving this case, the more dangerous it'll become.
She was silent, staring off at the endless sand and rocks.
Don't get started on me now. Turn back into the happy fun, Sonny. Excited to be in the land of Jesus.
Nate smiled. Sonia tried forcing the frown into her face, but her lips kept curling up into a grin just at the thought of Jesus. Then she asked with a small smile, "You ever wonder why God chose to come here to this particular place?"
No. Why?
He smiled. "I think it's because this area was right in the middle of the most populated continents at the time." She moved her hands expressively, now speaking with excitement. This was the crossroads connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe. The perfect place to make sure his message went out to the entire world.
All of his perfect plan.
She nodded too. Then as the sun began to set, painting the desert in hues of fiery orange and soft purple, Nate announced that they should head back down the trail. He stood, then took her hand, helping Sonia to her feet, but to his surprise, she didn't let go after standing up. She stared into his eyes with an intense look. Then she said, her voice heavy with concern, "Nate, I don't think you should go to Syria tomorrow."
Sonny, I'll be fine.
"You don't know that. You said yourself that I couldn't come because it's so dangerous." Then, in a lower tone, she said, "Your father was murdered, going to visit your family. Now you're going back over there, putting yourself in the same situation."
Everything will be okay.
He gave her hand a reassuring squeeze before easing his hand away. Then he made his way down the path, promising they'd go to church as soon as he got back. But Sonia just stood there, a cold, heavy feeling creeping back in.